misleading to me.
Who do you think Asa Hutchinson wants to win that Alabama Senate race, if you had to speculate, Roy Moore or Luther Strange?
Man, you are a man. You are a legend in your own time, not in your own mind, in your own time. Because what I thought about last night was, is there anybody in the Arkansas media that has asked the governor that question? And if not, why not? And so I don't know. Maybe Roby Brock will ask him.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I think we all know. I mean, we all know what, you know. Yeah, right. That's not going to happen. Or, I mean, we all know what Asa believes. I mean, we all know he wouldn't want Roy Moore
he's a big Luther guy. I mean, Big Luther is right down the line. Now with last I heard, Moore was up 16 points in one poll. Mm-hmm. The last poll I read last night.
Yeah, we got to watch.
So I'm sure,
Yeah. I'm sorry, Donnie. We got to watch it though, because you never know what kind of dirty tricks they're going to play on the ground. Like they did in Mississippi in that primary with Cochran.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I'm not in any way, shape, form, or fashion. I guess I was thinking more back to the governor. Would he answer that question? Well, he'd probably either at best hedge or with him haul around because of the poll. But yeah, to the election itself, absolutely. I wouldn't put anything past them. Look, if they will spend $30 million, A, B, they will tell the lies and things they have done on Roy Moore and basically try to destroy a man who has been nothing but stellar in that state.
Yeah.
All for a Senate election. They'll do anything.
Yeah.
We've seen this movie play out in Arkansas, right?
Yes, we have. But, I mean, you think about, his stance as on the Supreme Court, on the Ten Commandments in Alabama. That is so what's sad is there are people in the establishment all across this country that are so upset about that or so intimidated by it because they honestly don't know how to defend the Ten Commandments in public anymore. It's really sad. And then, statements, like he quoted, red and yellow, black and white, they are all precious in his sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world the other night, And he said, I'll probably get in trouble for saying that, red and yellow, black. But it's so interesting how you have other people that are so politically correct that they look at somebody like Roy Moore and they're worried to support him,
Yeah. And an interesting part, I did a little digging into the Ten Commandments controversy and the gay marriage. And if you look at that, Roy Moore, of course, being a West Point graduate, the guy is a brilliant guy. He's a country boy. He doesn't come off super polished, but he is not a dummy. He's a very smart man. And if you look at both of those controversies, and I put that in parentheses because I don't think either one of them were, both of those, he stood on the merits of the law. Neither one of those were like religious stands. Those were law. I mean, he had a solid standing legally on both of those. Mm-hmm. It's just that as Supreme Court in this nation has decided the laws they don't like, they ignore.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and the point I made on Copeland Report, I said this. I said, so Roy Moore ignoring the law on gay marriage is not the same as liberal judges in Seattle ignoring the law on immigration. Those are both federal laws. Actually, one is a law and one's not a law. There was not a federal law about gay marriage, but there was a federal law about immigration,
yes.
And yet you had judges who ignored that, but they didn't get reprimanded. They didn't get thrown out of office.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's this huge double standard, just like what's going on with the NFL. Tim Tebow kneels and he gets ostracized. People write on their socks about 9/11. They get fined. And then you have, these guys kneeling, and they don't even know why they're kneeling, quite honestly, most of them.
Yeah.
They couldn't tell you. If you said, hey, I don't want you to kneel anymore, let me fix this, what do I need to do? They couldn't tell you.
Yeah.
Jerry Jones couldn't tell you,
mm-hmm.
Yeah,
they're talking about,
if you look at the NFL, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. No, look at the NFL. Look at it.
Yeah, if you look at the NFL, and I was doing some research today, man, you look at the NFL and you look at the entangled leftists, the way they got all these tax exemptions, this tax-free status, nonprofit status, a $17 billion a year corporation, gets nonprofit status. And this is all done by, I hate to say it, from my home state of Louisiana. It was Boggs and Huey Long's son.
Yeah.
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
My fellow Americans, we are joined together today in sadness, shock, and grief. Last night, a gunman opened fire on a large crowd at a country music concert in Las Vegas, Nevada. He brutally murdered more than 50 people and wounded hundreds more. It was an act of pure evil. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security are working closely with local authorities to assist with the investigation, and they will provide updates as to the investigation and how it develops. I want to thank the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department and all of the first responders for their courageous efforts and for helping to save the lives of so many. The speed with which they acted is miraculous and prevented further loss of life. To have found the shooter so quickly after the first shots were fired is something for which we will always be thankful and grateful. It shows what true professionalism is all about. Hundreds of our fellow citizens are now mourning the sudden loss of a loved one, a parent, a child, a brother or sister. We cannot fathom their pain. We cannot imagine their loss. To the families of the victims, we are praying for you, and we are here for you. We ask God to help see you through this very dark period. Scripture teaches us the Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit. We seek comfort in those words, for we know that God lives in the hearts of those who grieve. To the wounded who are now recovering in hospitals, we are praying for your full and speedy recovery and pledge to you our support from this day forward. In memory of the fallen, I have directed that our great flag be flown at half-staff. I will be visiting Las Vegas on Wednesday to meet with law enforcement, first responders, and the families of the victims. In moments of tragedy and horror, America comes together as one, and it always has. We call upon the bonds that unite us, our faith, our family, and our shared values. We call upon the bonds of citizenship, the ties of community, and the comfort of our common humanity. Our unity cannot be shattered by evil. Our bonds cannot be broken by violence. And though we feel such great anger at the senseless murder of our fellow citizens, it is our love that defines us today and always will, forever. In times such as these, I know we are searching for some kind of meaning in the chaos, some kind of light in the darkness. The answers do not come easy. But we can take solace knowing that even the darkest space can be brightened by a single light, and even the most terrible despair can be illuminated by a single ray of hope. Melania and I are praying for every American who has been hurt, wounded, or lost the ones they love so dearly in this terrible, terrible attack. We pray for the entire nation to find unity and peace, and we pray for the day when evil is banished and the innocent are safe from hatred and from fear. May God bless the souls of the lives that are lost. May God give us the grace of healing, and may God provide the grieving families with strength to carry on. Thank you. God bless America.
All right, welcome to the program, ladies and gentlemen. I wanted to start the program with that address from President Trump there for obvious reasons. I think as you heard what he said there, it really just speaks for itself. And look, I know, especially for all of you talk radio junkies out there, you have been consumed with the news of what happened in Las Vegas the entire day today. I do not plan on continuing that discussion for today. I do understand that we already have people on the left who are taking their ideological stances, getting in their, getting in on their side of the field or getting in their corner of the ring, and they're doing this. Folks, I think what Donald Trump said right there is all I really care about at this point. I mean, our thoughts and our prayers are with our countrymen today who are grieving and trying to make sense of all of this and this massive tragedy. So that's kind of where I want to leave it for today. I will entertain your texts or your questions on Facebook. Just let me know, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Our whiteboard for today says record liability, with a little wordplay on the word or the phrase lie at the beginning of the word liability. Matter of fact, we spelt it L-I-E. Record liability. I'm going to talk more about this at 5 o'clock, respond to some Facebook chatter that's happened over this weekend. But I just want to summarize what this whiteboard means for this week. Is that the voting record of many state politicians is a liability for them. And the more people that find out about it, the worse it's going to be for them. They would like for you to think that me or Conduit or anybody else that is putting out there, Family Council, Americans for Prosperity, any of these that are putting out records of how legislators voted on a specific bill, that by doing that, they are somehow the afflicted. They are somehow the victims of that. And that, ladies and gentlemen, could not be further from the truth. I understand that they're offended that people are calling them out on not doing what they said they would do. But if you really take a step back, they want you to think that their own voting record, the thing that they're responsible for, that people finding out about it actually hurts them, which it does, but that somehow it's somebody else's fault. That somehow they are being, attacked unfairly, when in fact it's just the people finding out what they advocated for in the people's name. And I talk about this more in our Wednesday weekly video that'll come out for our Patreon subscribers on Wednesday. I talk a little bit about this more, about this idea of, negativity and everything else. But again, I'm going to address the whiteboard more coming up at 5 o'clock. You don't want to miss it. At the bottom of this hour, folks who are in Bentonville, folks who are in District 90, is it 91 or 92, Joe? 91. All right, so State Representative Dan Douglas, his constituents will get to hear from his opponent in the Republican primary. Mr. Scott Richardson is on the program coming up here in about 20 minutes. He'll be on the bottom of the hour. Exact time would be 4:34. So you certainly don't want to miss that, our listeners in Bentonville. And we're obviously glad to have the good folks at KERM. Matter of fact, the good folks at KERM who are carrying the show right now, I've been on the phone with them today because we've had some technical difficulties with the way we get the signal to KERM, KURM. But we've got a patch working now. But anyway, we're working on it. So I appreciate all the patience with the folks there at the affiliate there in Rogers. Okay, so on Saturday, guess where I was? Joe, I was at the Baxter County Republican Lincoln Day dinner. I heard amazing. I got to meet you guys. It was amazing to get to hear and meet so many great listeners who've been listening on Mountain Talk 97 there. I can't tell you how many people came up and wanted to meet, wanted to talk, wanted to know how long I've been doing the show, how thankful they were that the show is on, how they now know. I had one guy tell me, you know what one guy told me, Joe, at the event in Mountain Home? He said, when you first came on, I thought, what are they doing? What are they doing? He said, and then I listened for a few weeks, and then I figured out, I understand why. I understand why he's on. It was so great. That was probably the best compliment I got, because you see in the radio business, I'll talk more about the radio business at 5 o'clock too. Trust me, you want to hear it. But you see, in the radio business, there are no empty shelves. In the talk radio business, there's no empty shelves. So if you go to a station, they're going to have to pull somebody off to put you on. Okay, that's how this game works. It's extremely frustrating, and it's taken us a while to get to 6 stations. And so to hear somebody say, hey, I was one of these listeners that was mad when they changed the lineup, because I'm a talk radio listener. I know how it is. You want your guys, whatever they are, And so it was just good to hear him say, hey, look, I was skeptical, but then I started listening to what you were saying, and I understand, look, we've got a serious problem here in Arkansas. We've got a serious problem here nationally, but we've got to try to make Arkansas as conservative as we can, and we have Republicans that are betraying the people's trust by just assuming or actually manipulating, say, hey, I'm a Republican, so everything's fine now, right? So, who else was there? Not just me. Not just Dr. Mickey Craig from Hillsdale College, but Jan Morgan was there as well. Of course, Jan Morgan being disinvited from the Craighead County Reagan Day dinner. By the way, there's some interesting photos we may get to later in the week comparing the two gatherings. Baxter County had a fantastic attendance. Baxter County raised a ton of money. Right, and I don't know what happened with Craighead, but it was just such a big contrast. And I heard through the grapevine, the establishment was very worried. The establishment was very upset at Jan Morgan's speech. I'm going to let you listen to a little bit of it here in just a second. They were very upset by it, but there are other people that are going to go unnamed. But there are other people that said the spirit of the Republican Party was alive and well in Baxter County on Saturday night. The spirit of the Republican Party was alive. And you know who set the tone? Richard Casters, who set the tone. He gave one of the best speeches, opening speeches I've heard on the Republican Party and what it means to be a Republican. And it was, and I'm not even a registered Republican. I mean, I vote for Republicans, but I'm not registered as anything. I'm just unaffiliated or independent or whatever. If they ever had close primaries, I would register as a Republican. You know what I'm saying? Like, if they had close primaries and only Republicans could decide who their candidate, which is really the way it should be. But anyway, after listening to Richard Castor's speech, I thought to myself, I want to go register right now. I mean, if that's who a Republican is. And it was fantastic to hear it. But here's Jan Morgan. I'm gonna give you one of the best parts of her speech. This is what she was talking about. She was walking around the room. When she gives speeches, she doesn't like to hang around a podium. She kind of likes to walk amongst the crowd. Here is Jan Morgan from the Baxter County Lincoln Day dinner on Saturday.
These are critical times. So as much as it seems like, okay, we were victorious, we've got the controls, we can sit back and watch now, and we can't do that. because apparently the establishment still didn't get the message.
Talking about the Trump
The
election.
establishment failed to get the message that we, the people, sent them. And that message was, we know what is best for the people. We are no longer going to be good little Republicans who are going to sit at home, send you our money, keep our mouths shut, and let you tell us what is in our best interest.
All right, stop.
While you continue to grow
Yeah. I mean, actually, keep going there. While we continue, she said, continue to grow government.
the size of government, tax people into poverty, overregulate businesses, and enslave the citizens with entitlements? What? Wait, that's Democrat platform stuff.
And that was great. I love that moment because she talked about, everything. Growing government, raising taxes, increased regulations, and enslaving the people with entitlements. See, this goes into the unintended consequences, well, some say intentional consequences, but to give the left and big government Republicans the benefit of the doubt, the unintended consequences of what welfare does, which it does sap your motivation, sap your ambition in a lot of times, and you get this generational dependency on government, and that's something that you don't really see Republicans talking about anymore. You don't really see them talking about how dependency on government is a bad thing because X, Y. They don't ever want to get near that. Instead, they'll say that they act like they don't ever want to talk about it. Instead, they'll just rename programs. Oh, yeah, it's Obamacare, but we'll call it Arkansas Works to make you think that a welfare program is somehow going to do the one thing that it's never been able to do, and that is incentivize people to work and avoid a welfare cliff. When we're talking about those who are not truly needy. That's the whole difference. A welfare program for people that truly need it is one thing, but that's not what we have in this country today. That's not what we have in the state today. We've lost that battle because we have Republicans in leadership that don't even want to talk about what actually happens when you just give away something for free over and over and over again. Anyway, it was a fantastic night. I want to thank Richard Castor for being an amazing host. Baxter County, it's one of the best places in Arkansas, a great kept secret. Of course, I've been going up there for vacation my entire life in the Twin Lakes area. I have some of the best memories. That's what Dr. Mickey Craig said. Mickey Craig's an Arkansas State graduate, Hillsdale College professor. He said, he remembers going to Lake Norfolk or Bull Shoals and having these amazing times and how precious that was and how Arkansas has that special place. The Ozarks have that special place, and I completely identified because growing up and even today, it's just the place to go when you want to relax in the summer. All right, folks, we're going to take a break. The Liberty Machine rolls on. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to triplrpawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's triplrpawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, triplrpawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Do you need conservative legislation killed?
Or do you need policies enacted that ensure government growth?
Then you need to get Nephewed.
Nephewed. Hi, I'm nephew number 1 of uncle, nephew, and nephew, attorneys at law. I'm not a lawyer, but I am a senator.
And I'm nephew number 2, and I am a lawyer and also a senator.
Are you the victim of a recent accident in which the voters in your community mistakenly elected a limited government conservative who is now actually implementing the ideas he or she campaigned on?
That's right, nephew number 1. Don't be a victim of democratic elections any longer. At Uncle, Nephew, and Nephew, we are committed to killing limited government legislation and promoting bills that increase the size of government by using any tool at our disposal.
Because sometimes the truth of the matter is, principles get in the way of pragmatism.
Just listen to some of our great testimonials.
Ever since I've been using the nephews, all my special interests have been served. As long as you make sure your contract says lobbying services are prohibited, then the legal services of uncle, nephew, and nephew are legal. Trust me, put the nephews on them.
It came out of nowhere. I was blindsided last election cycle when my well-funded and paid-for politician lost to some grassroots limited government voters. But then I hired the nephews, and they killed all the conservative policies the voters wanted. I got nephewed.
I got nephewed too, and so can you. Uncle, nephew, and nephew will accept compensation via campaign contributions. Put the nephews on them.
PHP Parody.
These are critical times. So as much as it seems like, okay, we were victorious, we've got the controls, we can sit back and watch now, and we can't do that. Because apparently the establishment still didn't get the message. The establishment failed to get the message that we, the people, sent them. And that message was, we know what is best for the people. We are no longer going to be good little Republicans who are going to sit at home, send you our money, keep our mouth shut, and let you tell us what is in our best interest.
All right. So, again, that's Jan Morgan from the Baxter County Lincoln Day Dinner. Again, it was really a great event, great folks. Why was the Arkansas Republican Party scared of that message? Well, why did they put pressure on Mississippi County to cancel? Why did they put pressure on Baxter County to cancel? Jan talked about that towards the end of her speech, by the way. Now, Joe, every time I said that is why is the Arkansas Republican Party putting pressure on these county committees to cancel, Joe's pointing to the whiteboard. Record liability. I think that's exactly right. Because, one of the things that Jan did say in her speech, and it was how long is that audio clip right there? 30 minutes. It was a 36-minute speech. So one of the things that Jan did relay to the people is she just told them, look, not only the reason I'm familiar with what happened in the Capitol is because I got called off of the national gun rights quest, and I got brought to Little Rock to try to help. And that's when she went and just disclosed the conversations that she had with ASA, that she had with ASA's, senior staff, and trying to, not be a bunch of liberals about this whole situation. And that's what she did. She told them her firsthand account of what had happened. And maybe they don't want that. But they raised a lot of money. 870-275-9799. I think the people agree with her. Back in a minute.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
That it was so it is beyond corrupt how that all came to be to begin with.
Well, it's bread and circuses.
And I'm glad to hear they're going to undo it. I hope they are.
Yeah. I think they said something about that in 2015. The tax exempt status is kind of going out the wayside. But and I talked about this in my Wednesday weekly Patreon video. That's going to be out tomorrow, just about bread and circuses. We actually compare this whole NFL situation to Rome. and the bedrock principles of our society. Use a little Francis Schaeffer in there. But Donnie, I
love Francis Schaeffer.
Me too. How Should We Then Live? It's a great book. That's kind of what we're talking about tomorrow in that video. I will tell you this about the Jerry Jones thing. When I saw that photo of Jerry Jones kneeling, the one word that came to mind was worship. It literally is. Let's bow down. Let's pay tribute to political correctness, but it's not really political correctness. It's just let's make these fantasies a reality. Let's acknowledge that these fantasy outrage moments of these social justice warriors, we're going to claim that it's a reality, even though I don't think Jerry Jones is on board. I think it's more of a business decision.
Yeah, and we see this with corporate, America, just on a wholesale level, just folding. I mentioned this in a sermon on Sunday. You look at a lot of leftist stances that they have no credible, no concrete substance. Because let's take Target. Target makes this decision to start having these bathrooms. I mean, the women's bathroom where men can go in the women's bathroom. It costs them $2 billion. It makes no economic sense. Zell Jewelers starts running a ad campaign with two women mixed in with all the other couples trying to sell wedding rings. And the lesbian or gay population is 1.5% of America. No one in their right mind would spend that kind of money to alienate the huge majority of your customer base,
but they do.
For 1.5% of your customer base, unless it goes beyond. It's not about dollars and cents. The NFL is not about dollars and cents because Rush Limbaugh's right. They cannot win this fight. They cannot win this. So it's not about money. They're going to lose. I'm going to tell you right now, they lost $200 million in 2016, and they were already in the tank 12%, and I've got a story coming out on Copeland Report about this. The minor leagues where Tim Tebow played this year was up 12%. The NFL is down 12%. Now, I think that's divine coincidence right there, personally.
Wow.
But, these are not good, solid decisions being made. This is being made. You nailed it. It's like worship, and it's really disturbing. It goes back to liberalism is a mental disorder.
Well, I would just say, I was talking to a guy in the studio. They were talking about how, and this is just the truth. I mean, I'm not saying you can't be on the left and be religious, but it does seem that more and more, those who identify with the right-leaning politics, they tend to be more religious and more, traditional American values, Judeo-Christian ethics. Those on the left, not as.
The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, folks, welcome back. Happy Monday to everybody out there. If you're just now joining us, we did play Donald Trump's speech on the tragedy in Las Vegas. Our thoughts and prayers are with our countrymen today, and we will keep you posted on new developments. I know everybody's still trying to figure out what exactly happened, and the reports are coming out, but in the meantime, we're going to keep it on Arkansas-focused issues. I want to welcome to the program for the first time, we've got Scott Richardson. Scott is running for state representative in a Republican primary against Representative Dan Douglas. It's District 91. Scott, welcome to the program, sir.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you could make it. So first of all, tell our listeners, District 91, what are we talking about geographically here?
Yeah, geographically, it's located within Benton County. It starts kind of on the northeast side, borders Bentonville, takes in a small portion of the city limits, runs across to Centerton, heads down towards Siloam Springs, brings in Cave City and Gravette and a few other small outlying towns, goes back over to the Interstate 49, runs up along the west side of Interstate 49, taking in a portion of Rogers, and then comes back around to meet on the south side of Bentonville.
Wow.
So fairly large geographic location, but a lots of good folks out in that area.
So what makes you want to get into the ring, Scott? What made you want to do this?
So from a political perspective, I've had interest in politics throughout my life. I've participated in a variety of opportunities, but never ran for a public office. When I started listening to some of the challenges we have in District 91, and specifically some of the representation challenges that we have, it became very apparent that we needed a change in our representation here from this district, because our current representation doesn't represent the people that we have. We have a conservative body of people here, and the reality is my opponent's not he's not been challenged ever. He started this in 2012, and no one's come out and stepped forward. So I really think that from an education perspective, a lot of the voters, they see the Republican, they make the assumption that my opponent is a conservative at heart, and they vote for him based on that. But the reality is, without an opposition, without someone to step out there and say, "Listen, this voting record is not indicative of what a conservative stands for. This is not what we as a group of people really stand for," and so we need to make some adjustments in our representation. He's not had that yet. So my real challenge in this election cycle is to get the word out. Talk to people, tell them what's going on at our state level, what's going on with regard to how our representative continues to introduce new tax bills, trying to drive up our existing taxes, which is already astronomical, which is going to further stagnate our economic growth. And we're blessed here in the Northwest corridor with lots of economic development and growth, but we still have challenges with regard to that. And what would our economic growth really look like in this part of the world if we were to lower those taxes in a range that makes sense and stop trying to fund all of these outlying projects through additional taxes, and instead start working to fix our spending problem in this state and really work toward spending resolutions that make sense. So that's kind of how I got to this point, was thinking about all of the challenges that we have, the representation that doesn't represent the majority of the conservative base that's in this district, and how do we get from where we are to that point.
Wow, that's a really, really good answer. We're talking with Scott Richardson. He is a Republican candidate for District 91 in a Republican primary. And you were talking about how you don't think the current representing challenges is how you phrased it. And so I just I wonder, do you think that the primary is pretty much the general election now? I mean, Republicans, if you want to do anything in this state, would get political power of any kind for the most part, especially up in your neck of the woods. You got to have an R next to your name. And so, would you agree with that? This is kind of the general election. I mean, if you win this primary, there's a good chance that you're going to be serving in Little Rock.
And that's generally the consensus with most people. Well, obviously, we don't want to take anything for granted. There obviously is an opportunity for a Democrat to step forward and throw his hat in the ring, his or her hat, and try to make a run at it. The reality is, I'm not sure that representation would be that much different from a Democrat at this point. We do have a tendency to vote Republican in this part of the world, and that's a good thing. We're a conservative base of people. So if you're going to make an adjustment to your representation, you've got to do it. You really have to do it at the primary level.
So far, what's the reception been like as far as this? Is this challenge welcome? I mean, have you talked to folks who are well aware that Dan Douglas couldn't sponsor enough tax increases? I mean, whether it was the gas tax, the internet tax, or the other internet tax, and look how he voted with the tire tax and everything else. I mean, are people aware of what's actually going on in Little Rock right now?
Generally speaking, I've ran into both sides. There are a number of individuals that do follow close enough to understand what's going on, but by and large, the population doesn't really understand his voting record. They make the assumption that of course he's a Republican, so he should be voting in a conservative manner. And when you start talking about the challenges that exist in his voting record, you really do start opening some eyes. So far, the representation or I should say the feedback that I'm getting, the people are starting to have an eye-opening moment that this is a challenge that we have, and we need to make this change.
I'm going to ask you about a specific question or specific issue. You know, he was the champion for the internet tax, and I've gone, an internet sales tax, and I call it a new sales tax. Whether he was supporting Jake Files, which was the unconstitutional version that would, allow Arkansas to claim sovereignty over a business in Indiana so that they owe a local tax that's going to support local infrastructure, or his personal one that he sponsored, which had to do with getting reporting, getting websites to report the activity, and then the state would go collect. Which that good luck with that one politically, but his arguments for this were that there's this unfair advantage, that Main Street is bleeding, and somehow giving the government more money is going to save, is going to change the market and save small business. What's your reaction to his support of that and his arguments for it?
Well, the reality is it's from my perspective, and understand that I come from a technology background. I've been doing technology for 20 plus years, so I understand the range of challenges associated with trying to enforce regulation on the internet, and specifically trying to have taxes levied on specific types of purchases. And at best, it's a difficult challenge. You're always going to be, I think your enforcement level of that becomes significantly difficult across the board. But from a overall perspective, all that tax will do is effectively hurt the people who are spending money. These people are still going to spend that money, and they're still going to spend it on the internet. They're just going to be able to buy less of it. The argument that it hurts brick and mortar it's an empty argument. It doesn't really hold water when you apply that to anything else that's going on from a taxing perspective. Brick and mortar companies are making, from my perspective, a comeback because the economy is making a comeback. They're having difficulty because the economy is having difficulty. People that are purchasing items online are still going to purchase items online whether or not there's a tax on them. They're going to purchase things that are locally whether or not there's a tax on it. That's what they need locally. So from my perspective, it's an empty argument, and it doesn't hold water.
You're exactly right. And the fact is, we've got evidence of this already to prove his argument wrong, because Amazon has started collecting sales tax in Arkansas. And if his argument were true, we would have seen an uptick. We would have seen people be like, well, I'm not shopping on the internet anymore because now they're collecting tax. I might as well go out and go to the brick and mortar to buy it. That hasn't happened, and we've been doing this now for 6 months. You'd think there'd be this big increase, and so it is a phony argument. I feel like, and I'd love to hear your views. We're talking with Scott Richardson. He's running for Dan Douglas's seat in a Republican primary. I'd love to hear your views on limited government in general. And one of the other reasons I was so against this new tax on the internet, which it feels like a new tax. I mean, depending if you're talking about the use tax or the sales tax, the use tax we do technically owe. But
Sure.
I guess my question is, if we can stop the government from taking more money from us, that's money that they can't spend and use it to grow. What are your thoughts on that philosophy?
Well, our government is challenged across the board with a number of entitlements that we really can't afford. And really, this all comes back to that kind of concept. We have to understand that taxation hurts the people involved at the lowest level. So it inflicts difficulties there, whether it be from a business perspective and stagnating their growth and their ability to move forward. It impacts the individuals that have to spend money and purchase goods. It reduces their ability and their purchasing authority and power, and therefore drives down overall business sales. So it impacts across the board. And we know this. There's been a number of studies in a variety of different places, including the Tax Foundation and several others, that indicate that the higher sales taxes are, the higher your income taxes are, the more difficulty you're going to have in growing your economic presence. And right now, Arkansas lags behind the entire rest of the United States for the most part in our economic development. We've seen some good numbers lately, and I keep reminding people that's great. We need to see these good numbers, but that's just an indication of what's going on right now as an overall economy. It's not really a primary driver or indicator for Arkansas as a whole. And as we continue to grow big government, our debt to government continues to increase. So you have to evaluate the overall. And I'm not a person who's for zero taxes. That's not realistic. We have services that the government should provide, but they need to be minimal services. As the Founding Fathers intended, people should, for the most part, take care of their own lives. If tax is associated with bettering the playing field for the overall group or protection of the primary basic necessities of government, then we need to look at why those taxes exist and look at our opportunities for us to reduce the burden on the Arkansas folks. So that the reality is this is a returning investment, and it's been proven many times over that if you can reduce the tax burden, you're actually going to increase your overall revenue by growing the economy as a whole. Yeah. So it feeds itself and provides organic growth back into the overall government facility. But we need to be understanding of that takes time, and we need to develop that from an organic perspective and stop pushing entitlement programs and bigger government just for the sake of whatever entitlement we happen to be the flavor of the month.
Well, you just mentioned entitlements. I'd love to know your opinion on how this has all worked out with you had a Democrat governor, Mike Beebe, in 2013. You had Republican majorities. The Democrats, with the minority of Republicans, went ahead and expanded Obamacare here in Arkansas. Then you have Governor Hutchinson comes in. He keeps it, renames the program. We have a program that was supposed to only have 215,000 people on it. It's been as high as 320,000. It was way over projections. And this is a program primarily for able-to-work adults with no dependents. So how has this worked out, in your opinion?
It's difficult to defend it at this stage. I know that there are a number of legislators that continue to defend that it was the right choice. They use a couple of different arguments for it. It's the lesser of two evils, so to speak. We had an opportunity to bring in a significant amount of government money and take that and spend it in Arkansas, further driving the overall economic environment within the Arkansas borders. I understand the argument. The challenge that I have is that from an initial perspective, Medicaid, Obamacare, Arkansas Works, however you want to label it, it's insurance, and we have a challenge with this as Republicans. And I think we have to reevaluate our labeling for these programs. We want to call it health care, and we use that term. Well, this is health care. It's health care. We're providing health care. We're providing health insurance. Health care is what doctors, nurses, and administrative staff does. Health care is not your insurance provider. Your insurance is simply insurance. And we need to delineate the two and make sure that we're attacking both of those from an overall perspective. Regulations is one of the biggest issues. We have a 10-to-1, 9-to-1 administrator to doctor/nurse professional that's added in our actual healthcare industry. This is driving up the overall cost, and that's because our regulations have created an environment that make it very difficult for doctors to be doctors and nurses to be nurses, and so they have to hire additional overhead. If we had that kind of overhead in standard businesses around our country, our businesses would never survive. So we need to look at that as an overall problem for healthcare and look at ways that we can reduce that impact to them so that doctors can get back to being doctors, nurses can get back to being nurses, and that our insurance environment, including Medicaid and whatever else that we have on as an insurance, is segregated, and we can look at that from a perspective. But as long as Obamacare is the law of the land, then you have to consider, what are you being forced to do?
Yeah.
You have to choose what you feel like is the right move. Personally, looking at the expansion, the Medicaid expansion, I still think it's creating a long-term dependency and debt that we as Arkansans can't afford, and I think it's a situation that we probably should not have gotten ourselves into.
Yeah. Scott Richardson, I've got one more question for you, sir.
Sure.
The environment in Little Rock is, these are my words, these are my feelings, that it's pretty toxic. You've got You've got a division within the Republican Party right now. You have some people in the leadership that demand absolute fealty and loyalty, and they want you to, raise taxes. They want you to vote to do these things that are not in the Republican Party platform. Then there's others that are resisting. Some that resist get primary opponents, get targeted by, people in leadership. Are you worried at all that if you get elected and you go down to Little Rock that you're going to change and you're going to, not do what you campaign on doing? Are you worried about that at all?
It's a good question. It's a valid question. We as people, we have our understanding of the way things exist. Occasionally, those ideas may get adjusted based on additional information. The reality is, I have done my research. I have my understanding of the way things are, and it would take a significant amount to make me adjust what I believe and what I feel. To say outright that right at the top of the point, without having the insight that a lot of our legislators have, that I'm not gonna make any changes or any adjustments to my feelings, is kind of hard to do. But at the same time, I have an understanding that we have to make some changes at our state government level. I'm not concerned about pressure. The reality is I'm not getting into this race under anybody's bidding other than my own. I'm making this choice myself because we need to make some adjustments. If the people of this district feel like that I'm not making the adjustments that they need, then they're going to vote somebody else in. If I see some establishment pushing for changes in my district, some of the established Republicans, then we can address that at that point. At this stage, if I win, if I lose after I've won, at least I've had an opportunity to inflict some change. At least I've had an opportunity to start things going in the right direction. I'm not a career politician. I'm doing this for a specific purpose. If I am able to make a few changes and move things in the right direction and mostly educate our voters so that more voters take an active stance in the political process, then we win as a group. Wow. So I'm good with that.
That's a great attitude to have. Scott Richardson, thank you so much for coming on the program. I really appreciate your answers and your careful thought on these issues. You are up to speed. You do seem like you know exactly what you believe, and I can't wait to do another interview again sometime.
I appreciate the opportunity. I'll come back anytime.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I'm going to remind you who Mr. Richardson here is challenging. Dan Douglas. Back in a minute.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody.
Do you need to advertise your business product or service, but not sure what the best choice is? Folks, allow me to introduce you to talk radio. You're listening to it right now. Talk radio is one of the most unique mediums in all of advertising because it actually works. It gets the information you want to the people you want to get it to. And by the way, Those people are educated, well-informed decision makers of their household, and most of them have disposable income. If this is a target audience for your business, then you have to consider advertising on my show, The Paul Harrell Program. We have options for most any budget and can provide you with exciting opportunities to grow your business. We can put your message across the state, or we can help you locally. Call 870-275-9755 if you have any questions. That's 870-275-9755, or visit my website, paulharrell.com, and click on Advertise.
Just a reminder, Scott Richardson, great interview. He's challenging Dan Douglas, and Dan Douglas sounds like this. This is what he sounds like.
So glad to be here with you tonight.
No, wrong. That's wrong.
I told.
That's not Dan Douglas. That's the exact opposite. This is Dan Douglas.
You know, in 1972, I bought a Led Zeppelin 4 album for the song Stairway to Heaven.
I'm so glad he's got a primary. Wow.
Let me tell you about the internet tax. Let me just explain this to you, okay? I wear Wrangler blue jeans, all right? Why? Because they're cheap. I'm buying for $19.95 a pair. And they make my booty look better, so I'm told. Main Street in Arkansas today is bleeding, and they are bleeding because they are at a disadvantage to the online retailers, and it will tell you how much money you have spent with VictoriaSecret.com or wherever you shop. In 1974, I bought a Doobie Brothers 8-track tape for the song Blackwater on it. Anybody remember that one? It was good. Who have chosen to do business in this state. Now, people say, what are we going to do if this passes and we have all that money? That's for us to decide. But I ask you, what are we going to do if we do not pass it and we lose our brick and mortar stores, our stores that employ our citizens in our towns?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make just a couple of comments. One, Mr. Waters said that this is an unconstitutional bill, and it is. We can either fund the future of Arkansas, we can either take care of our Main Street businesses, or we can just say to hell with it. In 1995, I bought a CD, a Shania Twain CD. It had a song on it I liked and I wanted. Whose bed have your boots been under? Whose bed have your boots been under? Whose bed have your boots been under? Whose heart did you see, I wonder? They're closing the limited, whatever they sell, I don't know. We see what the budget is. Everybody wants, or a lot of people want to cut taxes. Other people want to fund certain projects. We have to have money to do that. If you have special projects, if you want to fund pre-K, you have to vote for this bill. If you want to fund highways, you could vote for this bill. We have to decide how to divvy it up. In total, this could amount to $150 million a year or more. That's my viewpoint on this. I don't consider it a new tax.
All right, folks.
In 2011.
That's all the time. That's all the time. Yeah, we missed the Lady Gaga this time. Hey, that's all the time we have for this hour. We got one more hour coming your way next. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
Rush, Glenn, Sean, and Paul. This is Jonesboro's 1013 FM News Talk, KBTM.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Much. I mean, it's just the way it is. And so these leftist causes become their religion, in my opinion. That's what I see. I say that they, and that's why right now, I mean, if you go up to a true leftist and you even mention Trump, it can get so divisive so quickly because there is just so much passion there, a religious fervor.
And no, you're exactly right, and that's not some right-wing, wide-eyed thing. Just go back to the DNC's convention, 4 or 6 years ago.
Yes,
when they denounced God, booed God on the DNC floor.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is not some right-wing radio host making some far-reaching, opinion about left versus right. It's there. They are anti-God. I mean. And so that's why you see Democrats that have any hint of morality or godliness leaving the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So but hey, on a sunshining note, Bob Corker's leaving the Senate. So that's
I know, I saw that. Oh man, maybe that. He had a lot to do with that Iran deal. That was so bad. You know what I mean? If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that dude, I mean, Tennessee, every time I get really frustrated about Republicans not knowing how to be conservatives in Arkansas, and I have plenty of frustration, is I look over at Tennessee, especially on the federal level. Now, their state level has finally got it. They're fighting.
They are.
Governor.
Oh, man, let's stop. Let's think it. Let's stop. Let me give you a specific example. So a couple of years ago, the governor of Tennessee, Bill Haslam, wants to expand Medicaid. Okay, this is, obviously before the election of Donald Trump. Obama's still in office. He's a Republican. He gets in his idea. They call a special session of the Tennessee legislature, and the governor's bill, the Republican governor bill in the Republican-controlled legislature doesn't even get out of committee because all of the Republicans say, we campaign to not expand Medicaid and we don't want Obamacare. Could you imagine, Donnie, if that happened here in Arkansas, where Republicans actually quit being lapdogs and stood up to Asa Hutchinson and his progressive agenda?
From your lips to God's ears, man. I mean, I had a good friend over in Memphis say this. He said, Republicans got control of the House and the Senate in Arkansas, but one, they don't know how to be conservatives. I don't know if they're scared. I don't know if they never were real conservatives, real Republicans, or they're just, flawed Democrats that just needed to run as Republicans. But something has to happen. But thankfully for Tennessee, they've made that turn. They're actually realized, the legislature now realizes they are a separate, aspect of government, and their job is not to do the bidding of the governor, no matter what party he comes from, is to represent the people that elected them.
Yep, that's exactly right. All right, we're talking with Donnie Copeland. He's a former state representative here in Arkansas. Now, Donnie, you've mentioned it several times in the duration of this interview, the Copeland Report.
Oh, did I?
Yeah, the Copeland Report. Now, I want to talk about this because this is just basically a news aggregator. Is that right? Just kind of like the Drudge Report,
that's right.
but for Arkansas.
Right. Exactly. We pull stories from not just Arkansas, but all over the nation. Breitbart News, a lot of really cool, more obscure American Thinker, which you're familiar with.
Yes.
America's Great. A lot of other sites, a lot of opinion pieces. I do more of the national opinion stuff, and then Robin, our co-founder, she was actually a newspaper reporter in her former life. She does most all the Arkansas, more of the, I call it the murder and mayhem stories.
Yeah.
And,
well, I mean, but it does have an Arkansas flair. And I want to give people. I posted it on our Facebook live feed, but I want to spell it because it's not spelled the way your last name is spelled. It's spelled Koplan report.com. That's correct.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
And it has an Arkansas flair to it. I mean, for example, you do have the national stories, but there's just a lot of good places to find just really quick-hitting Arkansas news. You've got the Gravette Police Department asking for help finding a missing teen. Another headline, U of A student accused of video voyeurism, sharing images online. Then down to Conway. Conway mother accused of trying to suffocate infant. Miller County judge gives man 100 years. Stuttgart woman blames Arkansas DHS data breach for outstanding hospital bills. I mean, these are some really good stories, and you have put it all into a Drudge Report. It looks a lot like the Drudge Report-esque website.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like a one-stop shop, I guess.
Exactly. And just kind of in this, and I meant to say this earlier, so this is not just kind of a thank you, but I want to tell you, man, I'm so excited about Patreon. I'm excited about what you guys are doing, the extra content, and so I'm actually signing up. I had meant to do that before I left town. I've been gone.
I understand.
And so just to hear you talking about the new and fresh stuff and the extras, I'm really excited. And I'm going to tell you this. I've told you this personally, and I've
The maintenance of a free society is a very difficult and complicated thing, and it requires a self-denying ordinance of the most extreme kind. It requires a willingness to put up with temporary evils on the basis of the subtle and sophisticated understanding that if you step in to do something about them, you not only may make them worse, but you will spread your tentacles and get bad results elsewhere.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers. We lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
You're listening to the Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
Hey, folks, welcome to the program. It is hour number 2. Welcome. If you, in the beginning of the first hour, we did mention what happened, the tragedy in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and we played for you the speech of Donald Trump. A very, very good speech there on what I think really accurately reflects a lot of what the nation's feeling right now about this terrible tragedy. Of course, people on the left are already going to their corners. I'm not going there right now. My thoughts and prayers are with my countrymen. I've seen those videos. I've seen the people on Twitter posting those videos. They're fleeing for their lives, and I just, honestly, I watched it today, and I just couldn't. I don't know. You know what I mean? It's just it's awful. It is it's absolutely the face of evil. It really is. I'm sure we'll talk about it more as things unfold, but I know you've gotten really just wall-to-wall coverage of this, and I reiterated that in the first hour. So, want to talk a little bit about some Facebook activity that happened over the weekend. Let's see here. What happened? I got Saturday morning. Friend of the program posted in the shared a link. I think this over in the Arkansas Tea Party Alliance. The shared a link. Janet, who is a friend of the program, and it says this about Arkansas State Representative Michelle Gray from Melbourne. Good questions by Dan Sullivan. Thanks, Paul Harrell. And then it tags State Representative Gray and Dan Sullivan in this whole article. Now, it was an archive of our podcast from Friday, where Friday at 5 o'clock, I highlighted an article from the Batesville Daily Guard where Michelle Gray accused Linda Collins Smith in that piece. This was back in May when this piece was written. Accused Linda Collins Smith of hijacking the gun bill this past session that we last week spent a great deal of time explaining and setting the record straight on, by the way. And so I decided to cover that, as well as cover and play a piece of audio that I have held and found pretty conspicuous for a long time that had to do with Representative Michelle Gray trying to get women added into the minority grant program. And it's a little complicated into the weeds, but essentially, and I've heard from women who say that they agree with what she said and are partly agree. The people on the show Friday, though, State Representative Michelle Gray, when they heard this, they were like, you know what, I don't know if I agree, and I am a woman, and I don't feel like a victim, but this is what she said in trying to get women given this minority status when it comes time for, state governments and state agencies and stuff to have 10% of their contracts with private businesses minority.
To follow up on that, I'm the perfect person to run this bill because, and it is my bill, no one brought it to me. This is all of my own volition. As a female, I understand the difficulties that are encountered on a daily basis, whether it's dealing with white men, men in general, or even other women at times. There is
other women. Well, that would negate everything then.
Struggle for women, just as there are minorities, to be taken seriously in the workplace. And a lot of women feel intimidated. They don't want to go into business because of this. Me being honest, you go to a bank to try and get a loan. If I walk in as a man and I walk in as a female, who's going to be taken more seriously?
It's going to be about your credit score.
Why do I wear high heels? To make myself 4 inches taller, so I'm looking every man in the eye instead of looking up to them. Why do I hold my posture a certain way? To be taken seriously. Why do I wear makeup and fix my hair for an hour every day? To be taken seriously. These are all things that are in human, it's human nature, but at the same time, as a female, I have to know what I have to do so men can step out of the shower, put their suit on, and then go to that bank. I've got to spend an hour and a half getting ready to make sure that I can at least compete with looks as a man.
With looks.
So there is an inherent struggle that a lot of men don't understand, just as I could never fully understand the minority struggle.
All right, so her bill would have made 60% of the citizens of Arkansas a minority. Oh, good job. Think about that. 60% women in the state. That's 60% of the population would now, if they have, if they get a business, they're now a minority, or a potential minority considered. Anyway, and so those were her explanations. I pointed out, obviously, how I just think those comments were strange. It's of public record, right? I disagree with those. And earlier, State Representative Dan Sullivan, in those same comments, he was questioning, and I played the whole clip, but he was questioning, had some really good questions, saying, because, State Representative Michelle Gray was saying, hey, look at the amount of men on this committee, or look at the amount of women on this committee. There are none. They're all men. And she was claiming that this disadvantage or whatever. So anyway, I had a segment about that, and so Michelle Gray responds on Twitter here. You can see her say that she, quote, appreciates the airtime. Too bad Paul didn't reach out to me for any further explanations. I would have gladly spoken with him and explained to him how his assessments of the legislative process and what happened during session are not only grossly inaccurate, but laden with an agenda to promote Linda Collins Smith. Again, I appreciate the airtime. Okay, well, first of all, I don't think my opinions are inaccurate. I was there. If we're talking about, I don't know if we're talking about this strange minority bill, or she's talking about specifically the gun bill, where I think she falsely claims that Linda Collins Smith hijacked the gun bill. Okay, and so Janet responds, and we're going to go through all of this. Interesting. I remember the panel Linda Collins Smith and Charlotte Douglas were on at the first Arkansas Tea Party Alliance. You know who else was there? Michelle Gray. She sat up on stage with Linda Collins Smith. The question was asked, what's your price? She goes on, airtime is good. I listen to several talk radio hosts in Arkansas, and all of them love to talk AR leg. Call in. I'm sure you would get lots of airtime. By your comment, I guess you're not supportive of Linda Collins Smith, Michelle Gray. Oh, and by the way, about not reaching out to her, I don't know. Do I have to reach out to I'm not obligated to reach out to anybody, number one. Number two, the audio speaks for itself. It is what it is. She said what she said about Linda Collins Smith hijacking the gun bill. I already know everything I need to know about that. I know where that agenda comes from. Goes on. Michelle Gray, Janet, you will never respect or like me because I don't agree with you 100% of the time, so I'm not entirely sure why I'm engaging you on this. I serve the people of my district and work more hours doing that and make less money than I do in my other full-time job that I held prior to being elected and still currently hold. I love serving and helping my constituents. That is my price. I feel like I am making a difference not only statewide, but my district and in individual people's lives. My friends, my neighbors, my community. We are very rural, and all my counties and communities count on each other for support. I wouldn't trade the sacrifices I make or the positive things I'm able to accomplish for them for anything. Now, the context of this was, what is your price? Charlotte Douglas, State Representative Douglas, said that that's the one thing you've got to know before you go to Little Rock is, what's your price? Because if you don't know it, they'll surprise you with the perfect opportunity. You know what I mean? With the perfect thing to get you to, capitulate. It goes on. The bullying tactics of outside interests, such as the Paul Harrell program, don't bother me. He has an agenda just the same as every other outside group. Associations will have my ear more than any other outside group, as they have members and constituents who belong to the association and have a voice within the association. You are assuming my level of support or lack thereof of Linda Collins Smith. It doesn't matter whether I support her or not. The people will decide who best represents them in the Republican primary in 2018. Representative James Sturch has formally announced for that Senate seat as well. I know who I plan to vote for, but that's my personal decision. I don't feel compelled to share. So this is where I got involved Saturday morning. I was watching this thread, and I thought, you know what? Let's just reply to that, and let's just go ahead and put the video of how Representative James Sturch kills special election reform for everybody to see on this little Facebook thread. And there's some back and forth between Janet, where Janet rightly says that Paul can defend himself, that's what I'm doing here. And let's see, she says some more stuff. And then this is Michelle Gray. She says, nice, Paul. This is in response to me posting the video of James Sturch walking down on special election reform. And we've got all of this stuff, right? She says, nice, Paul. Agenda elect Linda Collins Smith in full force. Just for disclosure, I'm only paid by the state of Arkansas to represent my constituents. Conduit doesn't control me or my agenda. Your website is copyrighted by Conduit Media. Need I say more? Yes, I believe I do. Even Conduit's legislative scorecard was constructed in a way that Linda Collins Smith was listed as number 1 or number 2, toss-up between her and Brian King, as they are interchangeable. Conduit has yet to tell the legislature how they constructed the scorecard, not that we actually care. All right, we're going to take these little accusations one at a time. First of all...
Can I say something real quick?
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Please,
go
please,
ahead.
please.
Yeah.
Okay, so I loved how she first, when she was talking about the bill, like the audio played, was mostly talking about female businesswomen. Like, Linda Collins Smith is a female businesswoman.
Yes, she is.
She has probably taken a loan at some point and got, like, all the things that she supposedly was, like, pushing that bill for. Linda Collins Smith is the perfect
it's clear.
embodiment of that. And second, I love how she said that even Conduit's legislative scorecard was constructed in such a way that Linda Collins Smith was listed as number 1 or number 2. Can I give her my tinfoil hat, like the one that I have in here?
Oh.
Like, just give it to her? That's very conspiratorial sounding.
Well, that's the way they are. That's all they can think about. They can't possibly think that they're not as conservative as they tell themselves they are every morning.
You can wake up and look yourself in the mirror and say, yes, I am a conservative.
It doesn't make it so.
The record liability.
You're liable for your record, and that's what this is about. Whether it's the audio of her saying what she was saying, or whether it's or whether it's this. But let's take these accusations one at a time, shall we? All right. Conduit doesn't control me or my agenda, so she's insinuating that Conduit does control me and my agenda, and nothing could be further from the truth. Here's the thing, because I've had people. They put this out on Twitter. I've had people attack me on this before, and I guess up until a couple of months ago, it really used to bother me, because what it's insinuating is the things that I say personally here on this program that are my opinions are not my own opinions. So it really is a complete attack on my character. Like, I'm not going to say anything behind this microphone that I don't believe. I'm not going to say anything that somebody's not going to control me. They're just not. Now, Detective Michelle Gray here points out that Conduit Media Group copyrights our page. Yeah, by the way, on the live stream, does anyone see the little Conduit Media logo there? Yeah. Let me just explain to you a little bit of the way how the radio business works, okay? You have these things called sponsors. You have these things called partners, and I am extremely blessed to be affiliated with Conduit because I agree with them. We have the same goals. And I'm the same radio host I was before I met them. I still believe in limited government. I still believe in a constitutional republic. I still believe in holding politicians accountable and that they ultimately answer to us, we the people. I'm still the same. So that's the first one. And so big detective, oh, wow. I guess maybe she's never watched the online show, which is getting increasingly popular. But let's actually take Michelle Gray at her word here, where she says, even Conduit's legislative scorecard, I'm going to jump at the chance, any chance I get, to go revisit the Conduit for Commerce legislative scorecard, and we're going to specifically look at Michelle Gray's score here in just a second. Even Conduit's legislative scorecard was constructed in such a way that Linda Collins Smith was listed as number 1 or number 2. Conduit has yet to tell the legislature how they constructed the scorecard. By the way, yes, they have. They have. Brenda Vassar-Taylor has come on this program at least twice. I don't know if she came on the third time or not, and has explained the scorecard. I wonder if you would apply the same standard to Jerry Cox at Family Counselor, who's also come on this program and explained his card. This is all about the liability of your voting record. To all of you, not just to State Representative Gray, to all of you, this is about the liability of your voting record and the people finding out about it, and groups independent of the legislature. They don't answer to you. They can put out whatever scorecard they want. But if you're interested in knowing how the scorecard, how you voted, it's very transparent. Here are the bills they scored. Go ahead and go to it. Here are the bills they scored. Or, I'm sorry, yeah, go to the next one. Look, these are the bills they scored. Do you see this? And look, Michelle Gray's name is highlighted there to the left, right? And we can go through this. I'm so glad that we have these resources. Check this out. All right. Let's just think about the ones. Conduit for Action supported an unemployment tax cut. It says here Michelle Gray voted against that. Let's see. What else? Let's go to the next X there. SB 723. Conduit supported the special election reform bill. It says here she voted against that. Okay. What other votes here? Adopt a least restrictive or rolling back the regulations on reciprocity licensing from state to state. She voted against that. Conduit supported that. Let's see here. The Medicaid disclosure bill. You know, Brian King's bill that would have disclosed Medicaid money if you're getting money for Medicaid. Yes, she voted against that. That was a big one. And then she also voted against the other Medicaid disclosure bill. There were several votes on this. Let's see. We keep going down the line here. Hey, she did vote against the internet sales tax. That's good. Okay. You see how scorecard works? You do some good things. You do some bad things. It's not that big of a deal. Now, Conduit for Action, and they put all these out there during the session. Conduit for Action opposed the highway tax proposal to increase your gas taxes. She supported that. She also, there were 2 votes on that. She supported both of those. Let's see, I guess that's 3 votes on that. She supported both of those. She supported the, here, this is interesting. HB 1267, the tire tax. She voted against the tire tax one day and then changed her mind and voted for it the other day, and it did obviously pass, right? So I wonder what happened there. So she supported the increase in tax on your tires and a new tax created on those tires, because that's what that bill did. Now, do you understand what I'm saying here, right? There's no conspiracy. And any chance to go revisit the scorecard, we're going to do it. Now, you can criticize this all you want. You can criticize this scorecard all you want. But it doesn't change the fact this is how you voted, and these are the bills that they scored. Now, let me go back to the Facebook post for a moment. By the way, let's see Michelle Gray's actual score. What's her overall score? She is at a -48. There are Democrats like Warwick Sabin that rank ahead of Michelle Gray, and this drives them nuts down at the Capitol. They just think all the Republicans, they really operate in a world where all the Republicans should be at the top of the list for sure, and all the Democrats at the bottom of the list. That's the world they operate in. But go back to the Facebook post, because I'm going to address the last point in this segment here. Are you ready for this? So when Michelle Gray at the end of this post says Conduit has yet to tell the legislature how they constructed the scorecard, well, there it is for you. You just saw it. But then she adds this about Conduit. Not that we actually care. State Representative Michelle Gray, not that we actually care, she says. Interesting. I have some audio from this past session where back in January, where Michelle Gray, it seems like she didn't take the opinion that nobody cares what Conduit has to say.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I stand before you today with House Bill 1164, an act to authorize licensure by endorsement for optometrists. Real quick, I just want to explain something. This bill has been on the calendar now. Today is the third day. About 5 minutes before I was going to present it, when it was on the calendar the first day, it was brought to my attention that Conduit for Action had an issue with the bill. We looked at it, and their issue was valid. So we kind of looked at what to do. I wanted the bill to be right. I didn't want to push it through it not be right. So we've done some research, and I'll explain what we've done and how we've got to where we are.
All right, so yeah, Conduit, she actually pulled a bill down and fixed it because of an opinion of Conduit during session, and now all of a sudden, the scorecard's bad. You know what? I have a feeling, that was back in January, I have a feeling that when she mentioned Conduit's name on the House floor as a reason for not running her bill, she might have gotten a few, I don't know, phone calls passed. Hey, don't ever do that again. We got to take a break. Back in just a moment.
Buy, sell, and trade at Triple R Pawn in Ash Flat. Firearms, computers, sporting goods, musical instruments, tools, jewelry, and everything else you can think of. It's all at Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat. Gun enthusiasts, log on now to TripleRPawn.com and browse their amazing inventory. That's TripleRPawn.com. You can also call them at 870-994-PAWN. That's 870-994-7296. Let the great team at Triple R Pawn help you find what you're looking for. That's Triple R Pawn at the Light in Ash Flat, TripleRPawn.com, or call 870-994-PAWN.
This is State Representative Dan Sullivan with a Liberty Moment. If all men are created equal, that's final. If they are endowed by their Creator with inalienable rights, that's final. If governments derive their just powers from the consent of the governed, that's final. No advance, no progress can be made beyond these propositions. If anyone wishes to deny their truth or their soundness, the only direction in which he can proceed historically is not forward but backward, toward the time when there was no equality, no rights of the individual, and no rule by the people.
Paid for by Sullivan for Arkansas.
This is Mother Government. I come to the people of Arkansas with an important announcement. In disloyal circles, some are questioning the scope and size of government and telling the people government programs should not waste the labors of the people under the guise of taking care of them. This is a thought I must correct. People of Arkansas, you should not believe everything you hear unless it comes from a government source. Let me, Mother Government, set the record straight. You know you can trust me. After all, would your own mother lie to you? You should know the brand new, terrific program known as Arkansas Works has nothing to do with the old, bad program known as the Obamacare private option. Arkansas Works is good. People who say otherwise are bad and are seeking to undermine my collective vision for progress. If these groups continue in their criticism, then you should question their party loyalty. Tell them to quit focusing on this single issue. And then remind them Mother Government says the future of Arkansas depends on this single issue. In my next address, I will discuss the need to prepare your fellow citizens for the next round of revenue gathering that will be needed to continue funding my motherly goals. This message was brought to you by our partner, Aristocrats, serving Arkansas. Thank you for listening, and remember, from cradle to grave.
PHP Parody. Watch Paul live at paulharrell.com. It's free and available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Because the Liberty Machine never sleeps.
I like the tinfoil hat jab, Joe. That was pretty good. That's what they think of us, though. They think that I should be wearing a tinfoil hat every day. You know what I'm saying? That's what they think. But let me reiterate, though. I can't tell you enough about. There's some things I can't tell you that are going on behind the scenes here in Arkansas, but this past weekend, the past 3 weeks in the state of Arkansas has been very bad for the Republican establishment. They are worried. Their record, they're liable for it. You see, somebody like State Representative Michelle Gray, And if you read the rest of that thread, they want you to think that they're somehow victimized by me telling you the truth. And the reality is, if they're a victim of anything, it's their own voting record. But they're really not. They're not a victim of their own vote. That's how they're the ones that caused it. How can you can't victimize yourself, right? Well, I mean, if you lost political power, I guess you could, right? We got one more half hour left.
Paul Harrell, weekdays from 4 to 6. Learn more at paulharrell.com.
Judge gives man 100 years. Stuttgart woman blames Arkansas DHS data breach for outstanding hospital bills. I mean, these are some really good stories, and you have put it all into a Drudge Report. It looks a lot like the Drudge Report-esque website.
Exactly. Yeah.
And it's like a one-stop shop, I guess.
Exactly, and just kind of in this, and I meant to say this earlier, so this is not just kind of a thank you, but I want to tell you, man, I'm so excited about Patreon. I'm excited about what you guys are doing, the extra content, and so I'm actually signing up. I had meant to do that before I left town. I've been gone.
I understand.
And so just hearing you talking about the new and fresh stuff and the extras, I'm really excited. And I'm going to tell you this. I've told you this personally, and I'll tell your audience that, I mean, you're great on the radio. People love you, and I'm so thankful to hear that you're getting beyond just what you have for a while, but you're really spreading out and getting all over the state. And I'm going to tell you, you are, and I think we're emerging to do that because we do a conservative slant to everything that we do. That you're emerging, and you're a lone voice in a lot of ways out there because we just don't have much media that will stand up to this governor, stand up to the legislature, and the powers that be. The media is really lapdogs, and we need some media that will stand up and hold them accountable and hold the other media accountable.
Yeah, well,
so thank you.
Well, it's I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I appreciate your kind words, Donnie. I wouldn't know what else to do, honestly.
Me either. Me either, Paul. I couldn't, in good conscience, do anything else. That's I'm like you. I mean, it's like it's not heroic to you or me because it's who we are.
Yeah.
And it's really sad that we will hold people accountable. And I don't think I don't think you've ever. In fact, I'll say this: I was accused not long ago of slandering the governor, and I took exception to that because when the governor's family was drug in because of a unfortunate thing that happened with some of his family, I said that's wrong.
Yeah.
Just because he's the governor, that should not be. And
I didn't cover it either because I was like, well, it's not really relevant.
Yeah, and I think not only was I upset that they did that, I felt and I prayed for the governor and his wife, and I don't have one personal issue. If he was conservative and he governed conservative, and the legislature governed conservative, man, I'd be his biggest fan. If he started today, I'd be his biggest fan. So mine is principle,
Me too.
And I see this progressivism that it just continues to creep, and it really hadn't slowed down hardly any from Mike Beebe.
Yeah, you're right. Donnie Copeland, that's all the time we have, sir. We appreciate it as always. And the website, again, is the Copeland Report, KOPLAN report.com. We'll talk to you again soon, Donnie.
Thank you, Paul.
All righty.
Take care.
Appreciate it. Folks, got to go to break. Back in a minute.
The Paul broadcasting across Arkansas and holding politicians accountable for what they say and do. The Paul Harrell Program.
All right, we've got Karen on Facebook that says she is a Marion County Marion County committee member was glad to see me at the Baxter County Lincoln Day dinner. Great speakers. You're exactly right. I addressed that in my first hour, which will be heard on Mountain Talk here in just a little bit. The first hour airs at 6 instead of 4 on Mountain Talk. So, yeah, I had a great time meeting everybody, so many fans of the program, so many fans of what we're doing, and it was just great to be among so many like-minded individuals. And, of course, Dr. Mickey Craig was great. Of course, Jan Morgan was great. We had some of that audio. We played a little bit of it last hour. Just really powerful. The spirit of the Republican Party was alive and well in Baxter County, and every person in the establishment took notice. They were streaming it. They streamed Jan Morgan's speech, and everybody took notice of it. I'm not going to tell you kind of what's going on. I can't. There's some people they tell you something that's off the record. I don't want to repeat any of it, but man, I'll just tell you they are worried. They're worried. Oh, actually, you know what? They're camouflaging. They're cloaking their worriedness. Is worriedness a word? They're cloaking their concern with outrage. Do you know that? They're cloaking their concern with outrage. Because everybody's protectionist. They can't believe it. And what's funny is those who are in the upper echelons of the Republican Party. Now, the ones who are not listening to this show. Now, what I mean by that is everything I say on this program, there's somebody who is tasked with listening to it and reporting on it. Okay? I know that for a fact, and I even have evidence. Okay? So that is going on, right? But then you get your mid-range people, like your mid-range, real hardcore establishment people, that they've never heard this program. They're not listening to it. Matter of fact, people like Asa and the establishment would want to keep them from listening to it because they're kind of this establishment. They could kind of go either way. If they heard the truth of what was really happening, if somebody had laid it all out like X, Y, and Z, this is what they said, this is what they're doing, it's the opposite, it's progressivism, it's, you know what I mean? You might start to have a revolt. I mean, that's one of the reasons I think Josh Waters, the great Josh Waters, by the way, who's going to be in Phillips County tonight talking to that committee, that's one of the reasons he's been so successful going to Republican county committee to county committee, giving a presentation on what actually happened at the Marble Palace in their name, And it's your right to know. That's what you got to understand. It's your right to know. But those mid-level people, they're not the ones that are really aware. And so when those mid-level people find out about what a Jan Morgan speech was or what she said about Asa, you got to imagine this is all new to them. I mean, imagine if you're one of these Republicans who are kind of in the establishment, but you really are just, you're like, oh, well, they've got an R next to your name. We've done it. We've arrived. We're here now. It's great. We don't have to do anything. We don't have to worry about the Democrats. We've defeated the Democrats. They don't even think about a Republican who's infiltrated Arkansas. I mean, yeah, Mitch McConnell might be bad, but not here in Arkansas. And then all of a sudden they hear somebody like Jan Morgan say, I mean, imagine it. It'd be like, if you're still on your honeymoon and all of a sudden you find out something that's just drastic, and that's what it's like for some of these people. I think some of that's where the outrage is. The other part is at the very top, the echelons, the protectionists, the one who are trying their best to keep the truth out. They don't want the truth out, man. They are really worried. They really worried. And, they're what they're telling themselves? They're saying that They're telling themselves that I'm not speaking the truth. They're telling themselves that other people are not speaking the truth. They're telling themselves it's twisted. Well, you're trying to twist it. You're trying to frame it. There's nothing we could do that would make you happy. That's not true at all. This has nothing to do with personalities. This has nothing to do with anything that's a problem with you personally. It's about your policy. And your policy is bad for the state of Arkansas. I mentioned this briefly about, well, you just want to be negative all the time. In our Wednesday weekly video, I mentioned this a little bit about this negativity and everything. And honestly, folks, they're projecting. And you'll have to watch the video to figure out what I mean by that. But they're projecting on who's really being negative here, who really has the power here. Let me ask you guys something. Do you have a vote that immediately puts into a policy that affects people's lives or has the potential to greatly affect people's lives? The answer is no. Even if we have the vote, even if we go, when we elected Donald Trump, did that vote have an immediate? No, it didn't have an immediate effect. Certainly didn't have an immediate effect. We had to wait a few months for the inauguration, right? And even after that, look. I mean, we're 9 months in. We're 10 months in. We got nothing. We basically have nothing except for Neil Gorsuch, a few other things. But that's because of the obstructionism, the deep state, and everything else. That's not true with these politicians. These politicians make a vote. It changes very quickly because it's the law then. It's now the law, right? Especially if they put one of these emergency clauses on it, which that's a whole other conversation. We need to talk about it at a different time. It's now the law, and we have to abide by it. And these guys are upset. They're the ones that have all the power, and they're upset with us for speaking out. They're upset with us for telling people the truth. There's no words that I speak that are going to affect people's lives, that have the potential to affect people's lives the way their bad, progressive, liberal votes do. That's the truth of the matter. And that's what you could sense in the Baxter County Lincoln Day dinner the other night, is that the people are sick and tired of this misrepresentation. And thanks to the great audience of North Central Arkansas and the Twin Lakes area, we're sending a message. You guys sent a message. I was just privileged to be a part of it on Saturday night. It was great to meet all of you, and I can't wait to do it again. So, all right. So, phone number 870-275-9799. Let's go over to Conduit 4 action, shall we? Go ahead and pull the recent Conduit story up, Joe, for our online audience. I want to talk about some of the criticism that we sent Senator David Sanders' way on Friday, because he's essentially gotten a state job. Not really. It's just working for an organization, a nonprofit that gets funding through the government. And so Michael Wickline has a piece over at the Arkansas Online, or the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, that talks about the state senator won't lobby lawmakers to fund program where he was hired as a director. Does anybody know what ethics are? Business ethics. Does anybody know what ethics are anymore? You've got Senator David Sanders. He's still going to remain a senator, and they've got articles now that, and Conduit for Action had the first one out that was on Friday. It was really good, and essentially, equated this to that of money laundering. Well, the government takes money from you, then the government gives this nonprofit money, and then this nonprofit hires, and that's essentially what's happened. It's the government that funds this particular area. And look, I'm sure people are like, well, you know what? This is just the way things are. This is just the way of doing business. It's specifically this is about Innovate Arkansas, and the fact that Michael Wickline has to write a piece saying, "Hey, he's got the state job, but he's not going to lobby." Come on, that's impossible. Do you understand how impossible that is? That is impossible, and everybody knows it. Everybody knows that that's impossible. There's no way you can shut it off. There's not a switch, right? Now, you could recuse yourself. I suppose you could recuse yourself from votes like that. But hey, all my best friends down here are going to vote for it. That's going to affect me, and then I'm going to vote for their bills. I mean, it's literally it's impossible. It was impossible to think of this like, compartmentalize this. You can't compartmentalize this. Senator David Sanders, it's a nonprofit administered by the Innovate Arkansas program to help, technology investors and that sort of thing. But it's funded $1.4 million a year through your taxpayer dollars. Arkansas Economic Development Commission. And a city senator gets to keep his job and get another one. No, I'm not to this article yet. This is in the Gazette. I just wanted you guys to know a Conduit's article of this is perfect. But what I wanted to talk about this is, listen, they knew this was going to be a problem. They knew this was going to be a problem. Winrock closely follows all applicable ethics laws, and the director of Innovate Arkansas will not participate in lobbying efforts for or behalf of Winrock or Innovate Arkansas. What is my parody, the nephew parody? As long as your contract says lobbying services prohibited, it's legal, right? But do we have any checks on that? Wickline writes that David Sanders won't be lobbying for state funds for Innovate Arkansas because, quote, the director of Innovate Arkansas is an advocate for Arkansas startups and not a lobbying position. He's a state senator, though. I mean, this is like telling me that Paul Bookout wasn't lobbying for St. Bernard's. Oh, he was just our public relations guy. You know, he just happens. Are you kidding me? This is the same thing. Paul Bookout worked for St. Bernard's Hospital before he had to resign, and everybody knew that was what was going on. Just don't pretend. Don't treat us as if we are idiots, okay? Don't treat us as if we're idiots. That's the headline. That's what the headline of this piece should be. Michael Wickline should just write an op-ed that says, don't treat us as if we were idiots.
So we don't have to make you look like idiots when we find out. Or when we put the pieces together, and then you really look like an idiot.
But they clearly know they had an ethics problem here, or this is an ethics question at the very least. When asked if he had been consulted about Sanders taking the job, Graham Sloan, the director of Arkansas Ethics Commission, released a copy of his August 18th email to Sanders that Sloan said served to confirm their telephone conversations about the possibility of Sanders becoming director of Innovate Arkansas. Quote, during our conversations, you asked whether there was anything in the laws under the Ethics Commission jurisdiction which would prohibit you from accepting that position while serving as a state senator. As we discussed, the laws under the Commission's jurisdiction do contain restrictions against a legislator entering into employment and or contracts, grants, or leases with state agencies. However, those restrictions do not extend to employment with a private non-profit. Hey, can we all agree on a general principle? And I'm not accusing David Sanders of what I'm about to say here. I'm seriously, can we all agree on a general principle? Should you be paid extra money to get a piece of legislation passed? No. Matter of fact, that is illegal. You can't. You can't, as a legislator, go to some business and say, hey, you pay me extra money and I'll go vote this way. You can't do that. That is illegal. And yet, with this nonprofit loophole, we don't know that that's going to happen, but how are we going to police it? You can't police it. You have to take their word for it. I'm sorry, that's not good enough for me. It's not good enough for you. With the attorney loophole, I just said, attorneys who are state representatives or state senators can contract with special interests. They can make all kinds of money as long as in that contract it says, I will not lobby for this organization. And then they can go and they can lobby for that organization. Can we all agree on the general principle that you shouldn't be able to get paid for passing a law? The answer is yes, we all agree. But what are the Republicans doing? They are not enacting the reform that we've been voting for 6 election cycles. They're not enacting the reform. That's the truth. Over to Conwood for Action. What's their take on Senator David Sanders in this? It's pretty good. I enjoy the graphic. Joe, keep up with this. I'm sorry I've had you waiting here in the bullpen. Conwood for Action commentary. Senator won't lobby. Does that make it all rainbows and unicorns? Winrock International announced that Senator David Sanders won't lobby other legislators on behalf of Winrock or the Innovate Arkansas program, which he was hired to direct. Somehow this announcement is supposed to make Senator Sanders' state-funded job look all rainbows and unicorns. Wrong. Sanders' situation is still that of a pig at the public feed trough. If you're not familiar with the Sanders story, here it is in a nutshell. Governor Asa Hutchinson announced Senator David Sanders had been hired by Winrock International, a private nonprofit corporation, to be the director of Innovate Arkansas, which is supposed to help start up tech companies. Why was the governor announcing it? Because it's a state program. Innovate Arkansas is funded by the state of Arkansas. Winrock administers the program from funds sent to it from the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. With the money coming from the state, do you think Winrock would buck Governor Hutchinson when he wants to reward one of his cronies with a job administering the funds? Winrock saying Senator Sanders won't lobby other legislators on behalf of Winrock or Innovate Arkansas means nothing. There is no reason for him to lobby the state because their hiring of Sanders already put Winrock in good stead with the governor. For many years, it has been a standard ploy for a legislator to supposedly justify a shady-looking job by saying, my duties don't include lobbying. Sometimes it's a clause put in a legislator's contract. Sometimes it's a public statement. This does not mean the legislator will not promote his employer's interests, lobby other legislators. It only means technically he's not receiving compensation for any lobbying he does. Under current ethics rules, lobbying for an employer is not what gets a legislator in trouble. It's taking compensation to lobby. Winrock's statement is merely the standard cover a legislator wants to show his compensation does not include the duty to lobby. Even if Senator Sanders were to stay silent and not vote on any items of interest to Winrock, there is still a huge stink from this setup. Under Arkansas law, a legislator who takes a state job must resign from office. To sidestep this requirement, the governor is using state money laundered through Winrock to give Senator Sanders a job. What do you think this says about the ethics of the governor and the senator? Well, as long as it's legal, right? Just look for the sign above the door that reads loophole. As long as it's legal, what's the problem? Senator Sanders in an email check with Graham Sloan of the Ethics Commission, and everything's hunky-dory. Legal graft versus dishonest graft. Honest graft versus dishonest graft. This is honest. Where's my book? Hang on. We're not going to break yet. Hang on a second. Where is this thing? Here it is. All right, sorry. I've always got to read for that. And Joe, is very spot-on catch there, sir. Yeah, here we go. All right. The book is A Republic No More by Jay Cost. Big Government and the Rise of the American Political Corruption. Here we go. Let's see. But as Quay and Penrose prove, the law often has trouble keeping up with corruption. Say that again. The law often has trouble keeping up with corruption. And they give an example here. In no small part because the people who write the laws like it that way. Perhaps George Washington Plunkett, a boss of New York City's Tammany Hall about a century ago, put it best when he said this. Everybody's talking these days about Tammany men growing rich on graft, but nobody thinks of drawing the distinction between honest graft and dishonest graft. There's all the difference in the world between the two. I've not gone in for dishonest graft, blackmailing, gamblers, saloon keepers, disorderly people, etc., and neither has any of the men who've made big fortunes in politics. There's an honest graft, and I'm an example of how it works. I might sum up the whole thing by saying, I seen my opportunities, and I took them. Anybody think that's going through? Anybody think that ever went through Jake Files' head or Micah Neal's head or John Wood's head? I seen my opportunities, and I took them. It goes on. Listen to this. Just let me explain my examples. My party's in power in the city. It's going to undertake a lot of improvements. Well, I'm tipped off. Say that they're going to lay out a new park at a certain place. I see my opportunity, and I take it. I go to that place and I buy up all the land I can in the neighborhood. Then the board of this or that makes its plan public, and there's a rush to get my land, which nobody cared particular for before. The book picks back up, Jay Cost. There was nothing dishonest about Plunkett's fraud, but he was on to something in drawing the distinction he did. Dishonest graft is criminal activity that harms people directly, whereas honest graft is technically legal and the victim is the common good, not a particular individual. What Plunkett was doing in his day would be outlawed today, but honest graft nevertheless survives in different forms, always changing to stay one step ahead of the law. So what are the Arkansas politicians doing today that's technically legal that will be illegal tomorrow? That's a good question. I just wish the Republicans would enact the reform the good people of this state are voting on and quit making excuses. But the good old boy system rolls on. So does the Liberty Machine. Back in a minute.
Order. In the name of public safety, order. This meeting of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards is called to order in the name of public safety. What's on the agenda for the day?
We have before us today, per our summons, a representative from the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing cosmetology, cosmetologist, and all things hair care and beauty.
Right. Of course, I remember this. In the name of public safety, ma'am, please state your name for the record, and thank you for appearing before us today.
Yes, my name is Cosmo Glamour Gazette, and I'm here in response to a letter our state board received claiming we're in violation of the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards. In the letter, you claim that our licensing board is in violation of your rules and regulations because we have failed to, quote, pay tribute, end quote, and therefore have not been granted a license by the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing licensing boards to, quote, shake down the Arkansans who have an interest in cosmetology, end quote.
In the name of public safety, order. Yes, Miss Gazette, we sent you that letter because you have not obtained our approval in the form of a license from our board to distribute licenses to the professional class your board strives to protect. In the name of public safety, of course.
Of course.
So, in the name of public safety, and just so we can get this for the record, you do admit and agree with our board, the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards, that you have not obtained a license, thereby revealing your board of cosmetology to be operating outside our rules, regulations, and authority?
Well, sir, I'm not sure our board agrees that we need a license from your board to continue to shake down, to look out for the public safety of Arkansans.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
Well, it seems we are at a bit of an impasse if we are not in agreement that your board owes us tribute.
Sir, maybe we could ask and see if there's a bureaucrat in the house.
Ah, yes. Yes, that would shed some light on things. A bureaucrat. Yeah, in the name of public safety, is there a bureaucrat in the house? We need someone to resuscitate and confirm our authority as the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards.
Here.
Ah, yes. Oh, good. Come to the end of the table in the name of public safety and state your name for the record, please.
Yes, I am Despot Ringleader, the head of the Bureau governing all state bureaus, and it is my testimony the Arkansas State Licensing Board governing state licensing boards does have the authority to demand tribute in this situation and will provide in exchange a license to say they can continue to operate in the name of public safety.
It's hard to argue when the public safety is put at risk. Very well. We will consider Mrs. Ringleader's testimony as truth, and we will pay tribute in the name of public safety, of course.
In the name of public safety.
In the name of public safety.
He puts the Paul in politics. The Paul Harrell Program, brought to you by Conduit Media Group.
All right, folks, we don't have a lot of time left. One of the stories that we didn't get to today, but we will get to it tomorrow, is this headline by Lisa Hammersley that broke over the weekend. I saw it on Facebook, and I want to talk about this in broader context. A days-old firm won a state grant. It listed its focus as economic health, no expertise in either. Basically, essentially, a company was created days before it got general improvement funds from Mike and Neil and John Woods, we'll get into it, but the same people who are being basically implemented in this whole thing. How many times has this been recreated? How many times has this little scheme been duplicated where you go create a company and then the next couple of days you go ahead and get that money? It's unbelievable what all is coming out. People are outraged. The corruption is real. The corruption must be dealt with, and Instead of Asa Hutchinson talking about calling special sessions to raise your internet tax, he should be calling special sessions to make the stuff that's going on illegal, to fix this stuff. And what's funny is, this stuff about the grant getting the money right after it was created, I mean, this has been public knowledge for a long time. I'm glad the media is finally taking notice. I actually don't remember it, but I'm told that I'm sorry to cover so much stuff. I'm told that I covered this on the show a long time ago, but I don't remember. Anyway, we got to go. We'll see you tomorrow. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/thephp.